Changing your life takes a lot of time, and I'll be the first person to tell you that you can't be a completely new person overnight. But you can take some incredible steps to make your life much more like the life you actually want to be living in not that much time at all. In this video, I'm going to share a systematic approach to changing your life in exactly 10 minutes. Phase 1, the planning phase. The what, the why, and the how. If you've been around the channel for a bit, you know I almost always start with why. And this is really important because a why gives you a North Star. It gives you something to come back to when things get tough. So why do you want to change your life? What's wrong with your life right now? Do you like most of your life and is there one big thing you want to change? Or do you like your life mostly and want to change a few small things? Or is there so much you want to change that you don't even know where to start? Here are a couple methods for figuring out your why. Core values. Basically, the idea here is that if we feel like something in our life needs to change, it's likely because it doesn't align with our core values, the things that are the most important to us. But if we don't know what our core values are, how can we live in alignment with them? So the goal here is to figure out what your core values are. If you don't know where to start, I have a video about that. I will link that up in the card and down in the description. Personal statement. Some people like to create a rule of life or a personal code of ethics. This is a statement that aligns your daily actions with your values and your beliefs. This is a personal statement about the kind of person you want to be, both aspirationally and realistically. The what phase. This might just be the hardest part of the process. This is about creating clarity about what we want our life to look like. There are two elements to this. The macro element, what we're looking at the big picture, what we want our overall life to look like, and then the micro level, which is what we want our individual days to look like. Now, there are many ways to figure this out. What I'm gonna do today is walk you through a few prompts that I've used in the past when trying to figure this out for myself. The key thing here is write this down because this is not a linear process. You'll be referring to this again and again and making changes to it. The anti-life. Sometimes it's a lot harder to know what you want than it is to know what you don't want. So for this prompt, take a minute and write down exactly what you do not want your life to look like. The role model approach. Is there someone you want to be like? What parts of them do you like? Why do you want to be like them? Take a minute and write that down. Next, what would we do if there were no limits? We often feel limited by money or vacation days or the people in our lives. Take a step back, cut all ties, and think about what would you do if money and time were no object. Now, once you've gone through these prompts, you should be able to create a pretty decent draft of what you actually want out of your life. The key thing here, though, is this takes time and it will change over time. So as I've done this multiple times over the years, my answers have changed pretty dramatically. That is totally okay. That's part of the process because we grow and change as people. Okay, so now we've thought big picture, macro. Now let's zoom in and think micro. What does your ideal day look like? I love this prompt. In one of my college classes, we actually went around the room and shared individually what each of our ideal days looked like. And the answers varied wildly. Some people talked about work, some people talked about relaxation, other people talked about spending time with the people they loved, others talked about hobbies. And the way people approached this was very different too. Some people started in a very structured way, other people were very broad and general about it. Either way, take some time and do this prompt and enjoy the process of this. I think thinking about your ideal day is one of my favorite things to do. It's just a lot of fun to think about all of the possibility within a day. Now, once you're done with this micro level element should line up with the macro level. If it doesn't, then we need to go through and kind of work through this cyclical process until they are generally pointed in the same direction. What you're doing with your days should translate into what you're doing with your weeks, months, years, and ultimately the direction your life is going. The systems phase. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. James Clear. Building systems is key to keeping you accountable to the things you want to change. Systems create structure, and structure is the best way to achieve your goals. There are two main things that we're going to want to set up in this phase. The first step in this process is to set up somewhere to keep track of your values, systems, goals, and to-dos. This is the best way I can think of to actually make measurable progress and keep yourself accountable to changing your life. This could be a Google document, maybe it's a Notion template that you build out, or maybe just a paper binder. But the point here is that it needs to be something that integrates naturally into the workflow of your life, because you'll be checking this every single day. Now, this tracker is a great place to keep track of this next element, which is create 3 core habits. These are things that we do every day or most days that are small and manageable and align directly with what we want our life to look like, both on the daily basis and overall big picture. I would personally recommend one habit that's related to health or fitness, one that is related to work, and one that is personal. Now, this is a subtractive process as much as it is an additive process. So this would be a great time to replace maybe a bad habit that you have with one of these core habits. So now that we've built this really good foundation of the why and the what and these 3 core habits, now we can actually jump into making the bigger changes. These are probably the things that you think about when you're like, I want to change my life. Well, this is where we get into that. In this area, I would recommend 2 goals. One would be a smaller personal goal, something like a hobby or personal interest, something that you can really dive into and invest in and be fully immersed in or have completed within 6 months. The other is a bigger goal, something that we can start within that 6 months. This could be something that is much more big picture, life altering, like changing careers or moving to a new city or something like that. So I want to take a minute to give some examples of these different goals. So an example of a smaller goal for me personally would be a hobby related goal. I had a couple disc golf goals that I actually have a video coming out about next week. It's a banger, you're gonna want to check it out. A bigger goal would be, back in April, I decided I wanted to shut down my video production company once I left my job. And so I'm in the process of ramping that down, but that's not something I can change in 3 or 6 months. It's a process of shutting down a business and completing the obligations you have in front of you. Okay, let's talk timeline on this. We could just stay in this planning phase forever, or we could actually start taking meaningful action in the direction that we want to change. This is part of that process. So this first section, that is kind of the planning section, the why and the what, I would say that's your first week. Spend a week in the evenings on this, really figuring it out and doing this correctly. This is the groundwork. This is very important. Then on this building your systems goal, let's say that's 2 weeks. So now we're at 3 weeks into the process. You're building these systems, making sure they are functional and good to go. Similarly, you're adding in these daily habits. So by the end of 3 to 4 weeks, you should know what you want, why you want it, have implemented this system, and then start doing these habits right away. They're a daily thing. Use that system and start building that momentum. Then use the rest of the remaining time, be it 3 months, 6 months, to focus in on those other goals. So your smaller personal goal, something you can complete within that time, and then secondarily start planning that bigger long-term goal. A super key element to this is keeping up with your system. So a couple things. One, if you fall off your habits for a day or 2, turn around and get back on. You don't need to be perfect with this. Change is a process. It takes time and it takes effort, and it's going to be hard, but it's definitely worth it for living a life that you actually want to live. The second element of this is something that's called a weekly review. I sit down every Sunday and I review the previous week. I look forward to the next week. I make my calendar. We do meal prep. I do finances for the week. And this is a great time to sit down and actually look and review these goals that you set out. Review these habits, review your tracker, your values, all this stuff and make sure that you are actually on track with what you're wanting to do. And if you're not, make a plan to get back on track, because that's just part of being human. It's getting on track, being on track, getting off track, and doing that process over and over again. And that is just kind of the process of self-improvement. It's gonna be messy. It's not going to be perfect, but overall, it's absolutely going to be worth it. So there it is, a systematic approach to changing your life in 10 minutes.